that, and are all doing it by hand. Thousands and thousands of votes across the state just to put some final stamp on last week's elections, which we thought were a done deal and a finished deal. Apparently not, because it goes on. Griff Jenkins in Lauderhill, Florida, with the very latest. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Neil, the hand recount is over, and so too, it appears, is Bill Nelson's 18-year Senate career. Let me take you inside here at Broward, where the officials are tallying and reviewing some other local state races. But look, Broward was Nelson's best shot at flipping this race. We were told in the beginning there was 25,000 votes here for Nelson. Turned out not the case. The 31,000 over and under votes that were hopefully going to deliver victory for Nelson turned out only 447 now stand to be Nelson's best possible net gain. We'll see what the exact results are when we get an official recount at 12 noon tomorrow. But by all accounts, it looks like Nelson's run is over. Rick Scott will win this race for the Senate. Now, whether or not we get a concession this weekend from Nelson is yet to be seen. But we did see an email, a fundraiser email from Nelson yesterday for emergency funds. And remember, if Nelson waits until Tuesday for the certification, the lawyers are still on the clock. Neil?
Indeed they are. Griff, thank you very, very much. So we're going to get a fair and balanced prominent Republican, a prominent Democrat, both with a keen eye on what's going on in the Sunshine State. We begin with a lawyer for Rick Scott's campaign, Tim Serio. Tim, thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Good morning, Neil. Thanks for having me on.
By the way, we did call Senator Bill Nelson's legal team for an interview. We've not heard back. What is your sense of where this vote is going? It looks like the numbers are simply not there for the senator, there's the issue of absentee ballots, there's the issue of signature on some ballots, right. But even allowing for the possibility that all go the senator's way, and that would be statistically impossible, it wouldn't seem to me, at least, I'm not in the state, to close the gap. What's your sense of things?
That's correct, Neil. I mean, Rick Scott won the election last Tuesday. He is the next senator from Florida. There is a process, and there's a process under state law that has to play out because of the margins. There was a machine recount. There needs to be a manual recount. But most experts, even in both political parties, realized that this margin was so significant, it would have been unheard of for any recount or manual recount to flip the result.
You know, the one thing I didn't understand, and help me with these so-called undervotes in which no candidate appeared to be selected by a voter. There were 30,000 or so such ballots. How was, or indeed was, that resolved?
Well, you know, it really, when you look at the sample statewide, what we saw, there are pockets of folks that just decide not to vote in certain races, whether it's a governor's race or another state race. And in the Senate race, there were, in Broward, 23,000 undervotes. And there, again, there was nothing statistically, it was odd. We kept an eye on it, but it just, for whatever reason, folks chose not to vote in that particular race.
So your view is that if the ballots were confusing, or there were a disproportionate number of ballots where Floridians voted on the gubernatorial race but not on the Senate race because it was tucked on a corner of a page. I forget what the details were there, if you'll indulge me, but that's the breaks. I mean, it happens, but it is what it is.
It is, and the parties get a chance to review these ballots before they're published. I mean, it's odd, but again, you find these pockets in different, not even in different counties, but in different precincts in different counties where folks just, you know, an undervote total might be higher than elsewhere, but there was nothing that was so much of an anomaly that it raises any significant questions.
You know, the one thing I didn't understand, and maybe you can help me out with this, is that under anyone's leadership, it seems like this Florida saga keeps coming back. And, the governor has been criticized for not, addressing it in his 8 years in office to try to clean this up or deal with this. I remember Governor Jeb Bush was similarly criticized for moving slowly on this. So I know that's been out there a while, and Democrats and Republicans point to him and now say to Rick DeSantis coming in as the governor, assuming that will be the case, that something's got to be done. What is it?
I think you have to remember there was a major overhaul of Florida's election code after the 2000 elections, and 65 of 67 counties did not have these problems. I mean, if the law is adhered to and these supervisors of elections follow state law, then there's really no problem. You know, the Scott campaign, we had to file a whole lot of lawsuits, mainly in Broward and Palm Beach counties, but a couple sprinkled throughout the state, to force compliance with existing state election law. Really, the problems have been centered in Broward and Palm Beach, and the governor has gotten some heat over Brenda Snipes in Broward County, but you have to remember, this whole scenario where a couple of years ago she had destroyed some ballots and she got in a lot of trouble for it, but she was elected. Right around that time, she was elected by the people of Broward County, and Florida's different. Our supervisors, it's different than a lot of states. Our supervisors are independent and independently elected. So I think the governor, you know, what he had to weigh was, do I remove an official that is duly elected by the people of her county? And the decision was that wasn't the right thing to do. He wasn't going to override the voters' will when there was no charge of any type of criminal conduct.
You know, we reached out to Bill Nelson's folks, Tim. They are not commenting, but he has put out an email blast trying to raise funds for this, quoting from that blast. He wanted to give you a quick update. We're still getting details with the machine recount underway. One thing is clear, it's going to be close. He goes on to say, Rick Scott has unlimited resources from his personal fortune to make sure every GOP vote is counted. The only way we can do the same for Democratic votes is with your immediate help. Talking about raising money to ensure that every vote is counted in Florida. What do you make of that campaign? That does not sound like someone who is any moment now going to concede the race.
I think that the only way that from election night, with the margin of victory that the governor had, and even a few days after that, the only way Bill Nelson could have turned this around was to, and his attempt and his strategy was to go to court and get the courts after the fact to basically rewrite Florida's election code. And I think his lawyers have every incentive to keep this going as long as they can. They're going to need a whole lot of money to pay him, but I think it's time, and I hope it's time, that the senator realizes it's statistically impossible. We're hearing it a lot, you know, up here in the Tallahassee bubble, in the Capitol, we hear from a lot of our Democrat colleagues that, you know, there's a lot of talk that it's time to concede, that the people have spoken. I don't really make much out of this last-ditch fundraising attempt, other than there's some hefty legal bills to pay.
But certification from the state is set for Tuesday, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And is it your understanding that that will be certified and go as scheduled on Tuesday?
We believe it will. We believe that Tuesday these election results will be certified, and Governor Scott, Senator-elect Scott, will be heading to Washington.
All right, we shall see. Tim, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Neil. Very much appreciated.
All right, let's get a view of this from a sort of a 50,000-foot level here. The attorney, Stephen Meyer, he was very key on Al Gore's 2000 recount legal team, and it must be deja vu to you all over again, Stephen. What do you make of this?
Well, it is to some extent, although there are some notable differences. The biggest similarity is that in 2000, there was a ballot design error in two different counties. In Palm Beach County, they had the so-called butterfly ballot, and in Duval County, that's Jacksonville, they had the so-called caterpillar ballot.
Right.
Each of those confused people and cost Al Gore literally tens of thousands of votes. And you have the same problem now, apparently, in Broward County, where the design error caused people to undervote, that is, not to vote in the U.S. Senate race. They simply didn't see the race on the ballot given its location. The reason we know that's the case is because the number of undervotes is typically quite small, far less than 1%. But in Broward County, 3% of all the voters did not vote in the U.S. Senate race. 100%, or virtually 100%, voted in the governor's race and the other major state races. But 3% skipped the U.S. Senate race.
No, you're right about that. And there was confusion, certainly the ballot in Broward County in particular, to a lesser extent in Palm Beach County. But the one question I have on all that, Stephen, is both parties had to write off on that final ballot, and they did. And I'm wondering if it does much good now to talk about a confusing ballot when both parties botched the chance to either simplify it or make it clear.
Well, for example, back in 2000, it was widely reported, particularly it was a Republican talking point, that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party had signed off on the ballots. That was completely false. No one had looked at it. Here, typically, the parties do not look at the ballots either. And again, I can't vouch for every single county. Each supervisor election in each of the 67 counties designs their own ballot. And of course, the races at the top are the same in each county, but the races at the bottom, the local races, are different. And there are a different number of pages, and and the design can look a little bit different. It's designed within each supervisor elections office. To my knowledge, there is absolutely no requirement that they seek or get the approval of the parties. They may, as a courtesy, show it to the parties, but they don't have to do anything. It's up to the supervisor of election to design the ballot. And typically, in prior years, the ballot was not shown to members of the party until after it was printed and designed, until after it had gone to the printer and it was too late to make any changes.
Well, we had heard of the Secretary of State's office that they were cleared by both parties. You're saying that was not the case?
To my knowledge, they may do that in some counties, but there is no requirement to do that in any county, and to my knowledge, it frequently or usually is not done in most counties. The other thing about these ballot design errors is that they're somewhat insidious, because it's not something that's so glaring that one would look at it beforehand and say, oh, if you design the ballot in this manner, this is the problem that's going to happen. After it happens, you can look back and say, now I see how a number of voters could make that mistake and miss the ballot. But it's generally not something that people would be so apparent to people beforehand.
Do you think Floridians just have a problem understanding their ballots, that some are just sort of overwhelmed by how many races, propositions are stuffed on these ballots? Increasingly, this is the case in so many districts and counties and states across the country, but it's on steroids in Florida. That's the problem.
Well, it is a long ballot, but I don't think the voters in Florida have any more difficulty than voters in any other place. The voting systems have been simplified quite a bit since 2000.
But they've not been simplified in Florida, is what I'm saying. That your ballots are considered, not yours, I'm saying Florida, have gotten more complex, more involved, more detailed.
It's a long ballot. There were 12 constitutional amendments that each have a long description.
Right.
There were a lot of different races. So there's a lot of races to go through. But the form of the ballot is generally simplified. You fill in a bubble, and it has some instructions. It goes through other things. It's much better than the punch card ballots that were widely used in 2000. But I don't think there's anything about the citizens of Florida that would cause them, give them pause or any difficulty in voting in particular.
Well, I took a look at one of these ballots, and I'm no rocket scientist, but I got to tell you, man, it was overwhelming to me. But then again, Stephen, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
All right, we'll have a lot more on the fallout from this. They're going to continue counting ballots, and it is going sort of line by line here and bit by bit. But again, if that mailing is right from Senator Nelson, he's still raising funds to keep the fight going. That doesn't sound like someone is about to quit a race. Stay with us. All right, the scene in the Capitol, we could be seeing some big changes in the Capitol. Nancy Pelosi has no formal challenger yet to leading the Democrats, but there are a couple of potential contenders. You've heard a lot about Marcia Fudge, who just might challenge her, but formally has not yet. Garrett Denny has the very latest on the battle to come, if one does come. Garrett.
Yeah, Neil, what's important right now is that Nancy Pelosi doesn't have the votes she needs to become Speaker. At least 17 Democrats are openly opposing her, and a couple dozen others are still undecided. Pelosi is known as a deal maker, though, and she has been busy meeting with lawmakers this week to try and win them over. Today, she got a big endorsement from the Democrats' target number one, President Trump, who said he's willing to get Republicans to vote for her to put her on top.
I would help Nancy Pelosi if she needs some votes. She may need some votes. I will perform a wonderful service for her. I like her. Can you believe it? I like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she's tough and she's smart, but she deserves to be Speaker.
That's not necessarily an endorsement Pelosi was looking for, though, and this week she was adamant that she'll win the speakership with Democratic votes. Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, who you mentioned, is one of the Democrats considering challenging Pelosi for the top job as Speaker. On Friday, she and Pelosi met for 45 minutes behind closed doors to discuss what it would take for Fudge to support Pelosi. Afterwards, Fudge said she plans to make a decision over Thanksgiving.
Sometimes you just need a different voice. Sometimes you just need a different kind of a vision. But I want to be clear that I have not said anything negative about Nancy, because I think she's a very, very good leader.
Many of Pelosi's critics believe she's been in power for too long and pushed younger lawmakers to the side, but with no clear alternatives, one possibility that's now being discussed to get her the votes she needs is Pelosi agreeing to limit herself to 2 years as Speaker and then stepping aside to let new leadership take the reins. Neil?
What are people making of the president's praise of Nancy Pelosi that he had? What was he doing there?
Well, Democrats largely retook the House by running against President Trump and his agenda. So the fact that he's coming out and endorsing her, it's not necessarily a ringing praise for Nancy Pelosi, and it's not going to win her over political points with her own party in that regard. But in terms of numbers, it very well could end up being that she does need some Republicans to come over to the side and support her. So whether or not the president is being sincere in that offer to help, she very well could end up taking it, or needing that support at least, whether or not she openly says she'll need to take it.
Well put. All right, Garrett, thank you very, very much. And after all, when it comes to finding a new Democratic leader, you need someone to take on the present one. So far, no formal takers. We shall see. More after this. Republican incumbent was retiring, so the two battling it out right now are separated by just 124 votes. It is possible that the Democrat could flip that seat in that district. And if so, and again, we won't know until these ballots are all counted and certified, I think on Tuesday, who won there, but that would be the 37th pickup in the House for Democrats if it were to materialize. Whether that constitutes a blue wave, well, depends who you talk to. But what are we to make of that? Let's get a read from Nan Hayworth back with us, Democratic strategist Rochelle Ritchie, Kat Timpf as well, Fox News contributor. You know, Rochelle, if that's a pickup, Democrats like to keep saying that's further signs of a blue wave. It's not just a typical midterm election. It would fall within the realm of a typical midterm election, but is it a blue wave to you?
I think the Democrats have a lot to be proud of right now. I do think that we still sort of saw a little bit of a blue wave. Maybe it wasn't, a really big one, but there's definitely some ripples there. I mean, when you look at how close these races have been when it comes between Democrats and Republicans, I think that Republicans should be a little concerned because these races are very close. And so I'm excited by what I have seen. I'm very excited to see all of the people that came out and voted, whether you were Republican or Democrat. I think that a lot of people have been the political beast or the political giant, and all of us has been awakened as a result of this administration. So that is one positive. But I don't think that Republicans can sleep on what they're seeing happening right now with the Democrats.
And Nan's a Republican. She's nodding in agreement.
I know.
I agree with Rochelle, who is my friend and whom I do respect. I agree completely, Rochelle. And what we know now is that these races, and I ran in a swing district 3 different times and, won a couple of elections, lost a couple. But what we know is that today, the national, was the case in the 2010 wave that I won in, the national climate means something. National candidates mean something, but you also have to run on the local issues in our district. And as we watch the Democratic leadership struggles proceed, or the challenges proceed, bear one thing in mind. The Democrats want to bring back earmarks. That is a powerful political tool, district by district. We Republicans said no to earmarks. So, we decided we were not going to, there are other ways you can get local spending, but we decided we would not
you can buy votes,
have earmarks.
Right.
But look at what Nancy Pelosi's doing. She's having meetings with members who have been either on the fence or opposed to her. She knows a lot about their districts. I'm sure she's twisting arms and
so
she's
she might
using
work this system to her favor.
Taxpayer dollars, right?
That's the intriguing question here, whether Nancy Pelosi comes out of this as the Democratic leader, the Speaker of the House again. She's got no formal opponent yet, but it just seems to be a matter of time. What are you hearing?
I think it's going to be a matter of time. And also, in order for her to actually make it as Speaker, she will need votes from some of those freshman Congress people who have come in saying that they would not vote for Nancy Pelosi.
Well, Donald Trump seemed to offer up some Republicans.
I think that's an endorsement that she probably wasn't the biggest fan of. She didn't get up and say, oh, great, Donald Trump endorsed me. Yeah. She doesn't really want that.
What did you make of that, what Trump was doing there?
I think that it's very interesting. He has worked with Nancy Pelosi before. Yeah. I think that they do actually get along. I don't think he was joking. I don't think he was being a jerk about it. I think when he said he liked Nancy Pelosi, I think he really meant I like Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah. But I think with Pelosi, though, we have to keep in mind it's sort of a double-edged sword, right? Because if she were to become the speaker, first of all, Nancy Pelosi has not given us any indication of when she plans to leave, and there are people.
So you don't buy this?
No.
Put me in charge for 2 years.
No, I don't. No. I don't. She's never announced any sort of transition, and you have people like Congresswoman Marcia Fudge coming out saying that they're thinking about running because they don't feel that the party represents the interests of African Americans and millennials. And if you look at the base that voted during this midterms that came out in droves, it was predominantly millennials and African Americans. And she was, suburban women. And so she was saying that the caucus, the Democratic caucus, does not represent the people that hold it together.
Didn't you find it striking, her comments? And these were after meeting Nancy Pelosi, when you would think that she was complimenting Nancy Pelosi, but you'd think that she would have been, well, yeah, I'm reined in. She didn't sound like a reined-in potential opponent.
Who, Marcia Fudge?
Yeah.
No, she didn't. But this is who I think that Democrats would support, and I think that's Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries, right now, he's running for Joe Crowley's seat as the co-chair. And so I think that he is a really, really good opponent to take against Pelosi.
So you don't think Nancy Pelosi is going to succeed?
I don't think that she has the votes. I mean, if you listen to what Kat just said, when you have that many people coming in saying, we don't support you.
They campaigned on it.
But there is a way around it, right?
Exactly.
Nan knows the process because she's there.
I've been there, and what they can do is abstain. When the floor vote comes, people
So when it's in
abstain.
Caucus, too, you can play games.
The challenge that Nancy Pelosi has, I mean, there are many challenges they have politically, but the challenge that she and her opponents, who have nearly 60 members of the new Democratic caucus, have either pledged overtly that they won't vote for Nancy Pelosi, and some of them are sticking to their guns, like Spanberger from Virginia. Others are starting to hedge, and others were coy about it when they ran, but clearly Nancy Pelosi's not popular in their districts. So they are going to start their terms with a violation of the will of their districts if they vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. However, if they simply abstain or vote present, then for every 2 of them that vote present, the number of votes Nancy Pelosi needs to become Speaker declines by 1.
I see.
So instead of needing 218,
well, that's
I still think that people would be upset about that.
But that's one of the ways. Look, they don't.
Kat's offended by the whole discussion.
I'm offended. I'm disgusted by politics.
But that is a way out of it, right?
After I
feel dirty.
It's
just
sort of a way out of it.
Right.
But if I was someone who voted for these people because they were saying, "Oh yeah, I won't vote for Nancy Pelosi,"
and then they get in
different
there,
than the establishment, and they get in and they help her get in, I would not be a happy camper, Neil.
Well, welcome to the new majority. Nobody's got it easy.
But the Democrats have a problem. They have a problem because if she decides to stay, if she wins, that's going to be an incentive for her to stay through 2020 because people will get comfortable. They'll get complacent as they have been, and they'll say, well, we don't want to stir the pot, so we're just going to continue. Because,
and they'll
like
run
I said,
Hillary again.
She has not said anything about leaving at all.
No.
All right, guys, thank you. What a mess. It's going to be a mess.
It's exciting. I'm excited.
We're going to have lots to talk about.
Oh, my goodness. Ladies, thank you all very, very much. Well, Tom Homan, the former ICE director, is furious at Senator Kamala Harris. Did you hear her comments regarding ICE and the KKK? People said, did she really say that? Apparently, the uproar over California Democratic Senator Kamala Harris causing even more concerns when she drew a link between ICE and the KKK. That was something that sort of tested the former acting ICE director, Tom Homan. Says he wasn't only unhappy about it, but offended by it. Take a look.
I think her comment was disgusting. For her to vilify the men and women, the 20,000 men and women that strap a gun to their hip every day, leave the security of their homes to enforce the law that Congress enacted. She's a member of Congress. If she don't like what ICE does, change the law. Or, you know what, strap a gun on your hip, put a Kevlar vest on, and go arrest somebody that doesn't want to be arrested. That's a significant criminal alien that you let out of your sanctuary jail in California that you support those sanctuary policies. Look, the men and women of ICE aren't making this up. They're doing their job. They're protecting the homeland. They're enforcing the laws that Congress enacted. And to vilify them, call them names, it's just ridiculous. She ought to go, I said last night, she ought to go walk the wall of the National Law Enforcement Memorial of the hundreds of Border Patrol agents, ICE agents that gave the ultimate sacrifice and lost their lives, and apologize to them and apologize for the families of these men and women that died serving the country.
All right, let's get the read from Arizona's Republican Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman, good to have you. What did you think of her comments?
I thought it was morally reprehensible. I mean, really outrageous. I believe that she did it for political purposes. She's running for president. She's trying to set herself aside. But I mean, look, these men and women are putting themselves in harm's way to enforce the laws, and the rule of law is what makes America different from any other country in the world. I just thought it was morally repugnant.
We did reach out to the senator, haven't heard back. Hope springs eternal, just to understand what she meant by these remarks. But it comes at a time, Congressman, where a lot of people are questioning whether our stance on the caravan is racist. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, you can try to characterize that that it's racist, but we're a rule of law country, and we have. So in April, they came up, a caravan came up, and now this one is 3 times as large. And I'm just going to tell you, if you don't enforce your rule of law, you really don't have a nation at all. And this has nothing to do with race or anything else. This has the rule of law. And I can tell you this, if we don't enforce the law this time, you're going to see another caravan, and it also will be 3 times as big, because we will have proven to the world that we don't care about our own laws and our own border.
You know, it also confuses an issue that a lot of people mistakenly believe that we've shut down our country to immigrants of all sorts, when in fact this year it is likely we will take in legally up to 1.25 million, which would be darn close to a record. Last year it was 1.13 million, 2016 1.18 million. These are immigrants who were granted legal status here, going through the regular and legal process. So the rap against this president is that, for example, he's shutting down the border, the Statue of Liberty is crying and all that. It gets overwrought. But how do you get that message out and explain to people a process? Because I think that is lost in the potential battle that's excited by sending thousands of troops down there to work with ICE, whether they can work with ICE. Do you worry that that message then gets lost, what's happening with legal immigration?
Right. I do think it gets lost. I mean, the narrative is real hard to make, but I mean, what I try to convey to people is we let in more people legally every year than live in my congressional district, by about 50% more. I mean, this is really what we're doing in America, is we are creating, through legal immigration, effectively another congressional district every year of population. People seem to get that, but I mean, we let a lot of people in from all over the world. I
honestly think, Congress, a lot of people don't even know that, and that's why I was interested. My staff and I were working on this over the weeks, just sort of saying, well, we've seen a lot of the coverage in the mainstream media that this is racist, what have you, leaving aside the debate over the caravan. Our borders are not shut down. There is a legal process. Now, the question then happens with these Honduran, Guatemalan, Nicaraguan refugees and what we do with them. Mexico has offered a couple of thousand of them citizenship. A good many passed on that in favor of getting citizenship here in the United States. I can't blame them for that, but the issue then becomes whether using asylum status is the way to do it. I'm told that asylum status is a very strict definition, and it must mean your life is in danger where you're coming from, or your family's. Is that the gist of it?
That is the gist of it, but we know about 80% or more, actually a little over 80% of the people who claim asylum, they're bogus claims. They can't be supported, and so if we can catch them, they get deported. But the problem that we're doing now is, and we've been doing this, is we're catching them. They claim asylum. We hold them for a bit, and then we release them into the interior, and we never see them again. Maybe it's something like 2% actually show up at their asylum hearing that we've asked them to come to, and so we've got this mass of people here who have no real claim, and they've been released into the interior. So not only are we doing the legal immigrants, which are well over 1 million every year, but we have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are here on an asylum request, that's bogus.
All right, Congressman, thank you. We'll watch how it plays out. To the Congressman's point, a lot of these dust-ups you've been hearing about in Tijuana are from Mexicans demanding extra security, calling for more help on the part of the Mexican government to help pay and deal with all of this. So it's Mexicans against many of these refugees coming in, and Mexico being ill-prepared to deal with all of that. After this. The president about an hour away from California to see the devastation of those wildfires for himself. Malibu Mayor Rick Mullen joins me right now. Mayor, thank you for taking the time. How's it looking?
Looking a lot better today, Neil. We're definitely rounded the corner from the operational phase to the recovery phase, and the weather is calm, the skies are clear, and we're starting to get people back into the center of Malibu. A lot of some of the neighborhoods have opened it up. I spoke to the city manager today, who's going to the repopulation meeting. I think the city of Malibu and the fire department is generally in agreement that we want to get people back in as quickly as possible. The limiting aspect will be the giant infrastructure replacement efforts that are going on primarily by the power company, putting hundreds of poles all over the place. But I'm hopeful that we'll get everyone back in, because I know that's the big concern for the people on the outside, is they want to get to their homes, whether they survived or not, and start putting their pieces back together. But Mother Nature is calm today, and we're taking advantage of it, and I think things are going to get a lot better down here today.
Well, I hope that is so. Mayor, we get all these numbers. All of the maps are on the number missing. What are the latest counts or estimated counts in your area?
I'm not sure about the missing down here. I think that's a big factor up in the Camp Fire in Northern California.
Absolutely.
I don't know what the latest ones are down here. We're very lucky. Very lucky. In fact, I spoke yesterday to a person who was actually on location with the first 2 people who were killed in this fire, and very harrowing episode. For anyone who's caught out in the hills when the fire went through, it's a virtual incinerator in its path. And we're extremely lucky that more people didn't get killed. 250,000 people were evacuated from this entire area, not just the city of Malibu, but the surrounding areas that had the fire in a 10-hour period. So that was very effective. The rest of it is a big mess, and I know that people are very unhappy about losing their homes, et cetera, but the fact that we were able to save so many lives, I think, is an indictment on the evacuation order was very successful. Now, the rest of it, I know that now we're entering the difficult phase, which is putting people's lives back together. We're getting a lot of resources from the federal government, the state, and the county, and everybody's very helpful. Now we have to figure out how to focus all that energy so that the people who actually need it to get their lives back together can do it. So we're opening up a couple disaster assistance centers. One's at the old courthouse in the center of Malibu on Civic Center Way, and another one up at Agora. The county is doing that up in Agora on Agora Road at the Hilton Foundation. So things are getting a lot better now, and people will be able to start coming back in, and it's much better now. Thank God.
Thank God, indeed. Mayor, thank you very, very much. I know you have certainly been having to lead through a lot, very, very nobly. Rick Mullen, the Malibu, California mayor, the president, again, due in California in about an hour. In the meantime, keeping track of what's going on in Florida right now, we're telling you about this hand recount that will affect or sort of get us focused on that senatorial race that might just about be officially decided. Maybe we'll have to wait until Tuesday with the state certification. But there is a congressional race that's separated by a little more than a few dozen votes that could also be an interesting difference in the outcome, because even in the Senate race, if Senator Nelson were to get all of them, it wouldn't make up the 14,000 gap here. I only mention this here because it's going to go on quite a while. There is a very interesting development in a congressional race, the Florida 89th, a retired Republican congressman, the two battling it out for his post. The Democrat has a slight lead, albeit by a few dozen votes. That's yet another seat that could tip for the Democrats. I believe that would make it 38 seats for a gain in the House. So the implications of that, even for your money, way outside the state of Florida. Back with us, Jonas Max Ferris, John Bussey, and Aaron Gibbs. Aaron, I think it is a stretch to assume this affects our markets, but the confusion and maybe the bigger gains for Democrats in the House could. I'm just wondering what you think of that.
I think it just purely on a percentage of vote versus percentage of House seats, that's just interesting on how much the Democrats are getting sort of a bang for their buck for each vote that was given to them. But other than that, from a market's perspective, yeah, I really don't see it being a meaningful impact on what we're going to see anytime next week.
Okay, I want to clarify something that might have been misstated. Right now in the counting process, the Democrat in that congressional race, that 89th district, it's the Democrat who trails the Republican right now by 37 votes, but it is close. John, your thoughts on whether this has any national implications?
It's going to be a Democratic House. It's going to be a Republican Senate. That's baked in. We kind of know that. Where it finally results here in Florida is not going to make that much of a difference. it was a blue wave that took the House. Now, having the Republican senator makes a difference in 2020. But all in all, I think most viewers are just wondering, in the day and age of the handheld calculator, why are we having this Broward County, thing year after year after year?
What do you think, bud?
Forget it, Jake. It's Florida. It does make your vote more valuable to move to Florida, so maybe that will help the Florida real estate market, which is having some problems with interest rates going up in the foreign market, foreign buyer leaving the market. I say personally, from looking at the ballot, it was very confusing. It was very long. The thing where the Republicans are all at the top gets them enough votes to win all these elections, but that was a Democrat thing from decades ago because they wanted to keep in power when they were in power. So it needs to be randomized so you don't have that backwind of, we won the governor last time, we get to be at the top, and people just go in there and check off stuff. So it's a crazy state. They get more news than 20 or 30 other states combined every year, and you see it play out in the elections. And but it's a fun place too. So
it's beautiful weather and all that. I'm wondering though, stepping all back from this, we had a crazy week for the markets, a lot of volatility. We're not getting over that anytime soon, are we?
It does not look like it. It does not look like we were going to come back. We thought, the first few days of November, it was just going to be isolated in October, but we've definitely seen just continual fears, and each day it seems to be something else. One day it's oil, the next day it's Brexit, the next day it's renewed trade war fears, and it just keeps keeping the markets on edge, and definitely higher volatility and low valuations.
John, if you think about it, the markets had their rebound anytime there was good news or even the hope of good news on trade and China. The G20 meeting coming up in Argentina, the president will be meeting with Xi Jinping, his counterpart in China. Hope springing eternal that maybe they cobble together the construct of a deal. What do you think?
Yeah. So I think the markets have been metabolizing what just happened in the election and what it might mean for policy.
I like that. Metabolize.
But it's just it's digesting. We're still trying to figure it out, right? Who's going to be heading what committee and what are their inclinations on policy. So all that has to do with all of these things you just mentioned, taxes and trade notably. But there are big, as Aaron points out, big issues out there. What's the Fed going to do in December now? Do they see a slowdown coming? There seems to be more evidence of that. Certainly globally there is. The U.S. is the only...
Do you think that gives them a pause in this rate hike campaign?
Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe they say, no, the inflation data is such that we're still going to stick by our guns on this. We're going to stay on schedule with December. What happens with Brexit? This is chaos in Britain right now over what they're trying to do and what it might mean for elections there and new people coming in with new views of Brexit. So there are a lot of uncertainties that are keeping the markets volatile.
You could flip it around, guys, right? Jonas, I think you and I talked about this idea that Europe's troubles in Italy, forcing budgets that the European Union hates, and the battle with Britain and everything else, that we look like a safe haven. Certainly our dollar for a good chunk this week was a safe haven.
I think there's no question that the Brexit things particularly, and then Italy with their debt problems, is keeping, even in this tariff thing, we're still the #1 destination for money, which is why our currency is actually a little too strong, because relatively speaking, we don't have banks teetering on failure like they do in Europe because of Brexit. So that's good. I am a little concerned if the tariff thing goes too well. I do think the Fed is itching to raise rates, and they've probably been lagging a little because they think there's going to be a tariff war that's going to be a drag on the economy. If they think that problem's gone, they're like, okay, we can go back up to raising rates higher. And rates going up was actually what was hurting the market this year the most, not the tariff war. Whenever we saw the 10-year go to like about 3.25, which equates to roughly a 5% 30-year fixed mortgage for people at home, which is very psychologically important right now and was leading to pressure in the real estate market. So if we go higher than that, I think that could cause problems for stocks and real estate. So in some ways, you kind of want to keep the Fed restricted right now, worried about the trade situation.
Well, are you worried, Aaron, that you always hear this talk, there's going to be a global slowdown and it's going to bite us too? Do you buy that?
Up until we just saw some real concerning numbers coming out of Europe, just in the past 2 weeks, particularly disappointing GDP growth, that type of thing. The combination of a hard Brexit and Italy not complying with the EU, those are starting to loom larger in our concerns. So yes, the U.S. still looks much safer, but there's definitely a little more exposure and risk out there for us. And so, yeah,
our own growth could slow then by that.
Yes,
right? Weren't
exactly.
they saying that this week, that maybe we don't see the big growth that we had anticipated as a result of this?
Yeah, that's exactly right. How long can the U.S. as the main engine of the global economy keep chugging up the hill and dragging along the rest of the world?
What do you think?
If the rest of the world was doing almost as well as we were, we would be doing even better. It would be like the best economy of like 20 or 30 years, but we're the only ones really pulling the ship at this point. So it's a great growth rate. It's better than the last decade or so. It's not as good as it could be without the other countries joining in.
Well, you're not reliable, though, because you couldn't even understand the Florida ballot.
I could not. I'm still working on some of the questions. I'm mailing it in.
I'm kidding. You guys are all great, and thank you very, very much. By the way, the president, he's been busy tweeting, saying right now, heading to California. In fact, that's exactly what he's doing. He's going to meet with Kevin McCarthy, the new Republican leader. Look forward to be with our brave firefighters, first responders, and FEMA, along with many brave people of California. We are with you all the way. God bless you all. That will conclude our coverage here. Of course, we'll be looking at the implications of all of this as, for example, the count goes on in Florida, and they hope to resolve and get an election that ended a week ago, plus to finally end. Fox continues.